A brand is the biggest form of leverage you could have in a business, and here's why. Number one, a brand allows a business to differentiate from other competitors in an industry, making the business more memorable to consumers. Number two, a brand elevates the perceived value of products, enabling businesses to charge premium prices in the market. Number three, a brand fosters a connection between a business and its consumers, which leads to repeat business and customer retention. Given all these benefits, it's evident why an e-commerce business owner would be motivated to build a brand, right? The problem that most e-commerce business owners have is that they don't know how branding works. And they definitely don't know how to strategically build a brand around their business. But that's why they go with these videos to show DTC founders exactly that, how branding works and how to actually build a brand for their business. But before we do that, who am I and why am I qualified to tell you all this information? My name is Uradia and I'm the founder of IDMA, which is a growth consulting and management firm for e-commerce and direct-to-consumer brands. At IDMA, we simply help e-commerce brand owners grow their e-commerce brand to multiple 7 or 8 figures a year by implementing our growth infrastructure into their businesses and managing it on their behalf. In other words, we partner with brand owners and take care of the marketing and sales department within their business to make it inevitable for them to achieve profitable, predictable, and sustainable growth with the brand. Okay, so in this video, we'll be going over 4 things. Number 1, what a brand actually is. 2, the importance of building a strategic brand. 3, how to build a strategic brand. 4, how to own the position in the mind of consumers. Cool. So firstly, what actually is a brand? Put very simply, a brand is the perception people hold of your company in the marketplace. A brand encompasses the thoughts, emotions, and direct or indirect experiences, such as word of mouth, that people have with your company, its products, and its services. This can also be applied to humans too. Your brand as a person is what people think of you, how they feel about you, as well as the experience they have when they interact with you. So, in essence, a brand is the perception people have of your company in the marketplace, right? It's what they think about you, it's how they feel about you, and the indirect and direct experiences that they have with your company, its products, and its services, essentially, right? Now, a very common misconception that people have is thinking that branding is the same as marketing, right? Your brand is how your company is perceived. Marketing is how you tell people about your brand. These are 2 different things, right? How your company is perceived in the marketplace is your brand, and how you tell people about your brand in the marketplace, how you make people aware of your brand, is marketing, right? That's what marketing is, all right? In this, I feel like this diagram, let me zoom in quickly, explains this. It shows this very clearly, right? So your brand is how people perceive your company, right? It's what attracts people to your company. But marketing is how you essentially make people, it's the bridge, if you will, that attracts, it's the thing that makes people aware that your company or your brand exists. Without marketing, customers, which is what the circles with the C means, so all these circles means obviously customers, right? Or target audience, right? Without marketing, people wouldn't know about your brand. They wouldn't be aware of your brand. They wouldn't be able to get to know your brand. You need marketing in order for people to know about your brand and your company, right? And its products and services, right? So marketing is the bridge. It's not the same as the brand. The brand is essentially how the company is perceived, right? Which is why it's on this side. The marketing is the bridge between the customers and your brand, right? Now, moving on, let me zoom out. I think that diagram explains it. It demonstrates it very well. Now that we know what a brand is, right? Let's move on to the importance of building a strategic brand. Why is building a brand important? All right, let's go into that. The importance of building a strategic brand. I want to quickly go back to basics and emphasize why building a brand for your business is a must and not just a nice to have. As a business owner, to make money, you need customers, right? Like just first principles thinking. If you want to make money in business, you need customers, right? This is just first principles thinking, right? And to get customers, you need a product or products that people are happy to exchange their money for, right? So people need to give you money for your products, right? They need to be willing to give you money, right? In order to receive your products, they have to be willing to exchange money for products, right? Now, and before someone exchanges their money for your product or products, they have to go through the different stages of the buying journey, i.e., interest, becoming aware of your products or your business, developing interest and considering your products against other competitors, right? That's what the different stages of the buying journey is, right? Now, pay attention because this is very important. As a potential customer goes down your funnel, they'll reach the consideration stage, which is where they'll be considering not just your products, but your competitors' products too, right? So this is all first principles thinking, right? This is just logic. We just go step by step logically, right? People have to be willing to exchange their money for your products. Then they have to give you money, right? To essentially get your products, right? They have to consider your products against your competitors, right? And now at this stage, as a brand owner, you have to answer one of the most important questions that is in the potential customer's head, right? So number one, they have to be willing to exchange their money for your products. 2, they're going to compare your products to the competitors' products. And 3, you have to answer a very important question that they're going to have in their head before they actually pull the trigger or pull the credit cards. They pull the credit cards out and are actually paying for your products. Before they do that, you need to answer a very important question. And this important question is, why should I buy from company A, which is your business, or instead of company B, your competitor's business, right? So why should I buy from you instead of them? Essentially, you're going to have to answer that question. Now, in most markets, if not all markets at this point, there are probably other businesses selling the exact same thing you're selling with the same quality, the same features, probably with very similar designs to you. Potential customers won't see a difference between you and your competitors, right? So same quality, same features, same design, and they won't be able to tell the difference between your products and your competitors' products, right? Now, this is what we call being commoditized. This is what we call being commoditized. You become a commodity, right? Because people can't tell why your products are different to others. They don't see the value in it, right? Because they just see it as being the same as everybody else, right? If all you're going to say is we have the best quality or we are unique, then it is only a matter of time before you go out of business, my friend. Now, before I continue, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Question 1, do you want to be in a position where you have the cheapest prices just so you can beat your competitors on price? So do you want to be in a position where you have the lowest price just so you can beat your competitors on having the lowest price, right? Before you answer, let me make this very clear. When you become a commodity, the only way for you to compete is by constantly trying to be the cheapest, right? When you're a commodity, that's the only option you have because people won't see the value in your products. So the only way they can make sense or justify buying your product over someone else is because you're the cheapest. That's the only reason they would buy your product, right? So when you're a commodity, the only thing you can do is be the cheapest. Being second cheapest isn't even good enough because that doesn't give them a reason to buy you. They'll buy the cheapest one. They won't buy you. If you're the second cheapest, they won't buy you. They're going to buy the cheapest one, right? Because you're a commodity. You do the same thing. Why would I spend more money on your products or services when I can just buy someone else's products and services for less? And it does the same thing in their head, right? That's how they're thinking, right? So, yeah. So when you become a commodity, the only way for you to compete is by constantly trying to be the cheapest. This is because potential customers are unable to find a good reason to pay more for your products when you perceive to be the same as everybody else, right? Now, that's why you said. Question 2, do you want to be in a position where your business is being compared to your competitors? I really hope you said no to both of these questions. Now, the only way to stop being a commodity is by building a brand. So this is the importance of building a brand. If you want to stop being a commodity, you have to build a brand. You have to build a brand. There's no other way about it. If you don't have a brand, you're going to be a commodity. And if you're a commodity, you're going to have to compete on price, which is the worst type of competition. If your advantage over your competitors is the fact that you're the cheapest, you're done. Because everybody can reduce prices. It's not hard to do. You just have to make sure that your unit economics makes sense, right, to do so. It's not difficult to do. In fact, some people are happy to not make any profit, saying to you, if the chasing grows aggressively. They're happy to make no profit today. So they can even go in debt or lose money on every sale just to make sure that you don't get sales. So if you're competing on price, that's the worst type of competition. That's the worst type of advantage or edge. you can have over competitors. It's not a really good advantage because everybody can have that advantage. All they have to do is reduce prices of their products, right? So unless you build a brand, you're always going to be a commodity. Now, as you can probably tell, the businesses that build a brand are doing it to essentially influence consumer behavior, right? So people can choose them over other companies, right? They can choose their company over the other companies, right? That's what they're building brands. The building brands to essentially become the option that people naturally gravitate towards when it comes to buying a product in their product, category in their industry, right? Now, when done right, three things happen. You escape the commodity trap. Instead of competing on price, you command premium pricing and people still choose you. So you can charge even higher for your products, right? And people will still choose you because you're the preferred choice, right? Two, you boost loyalty and retention. Customers come back and buy your products over and over again without considering your competitors, making your business more profitable, right? Because they just keep coming back to you. CLV, customer lifetime value, increases, saying average order value probably increases on average. So you just make more money. People come to you and they stay with you. So you're able to make more money from each customer over time, right? So assuming you're able to retain them, of course, right? So this is what brand does. You're able to retain customers. So you make more money over the long term, right? And you're more profitable as well. Because when people come back to you and willingly give you money, you don't have to go out there and try and generate sales. They'll just come back to you and just buy without you having to see an ad. They just come back to you. They don't have to see an ad. They just come back and buy because I trust this brand and I keep buying from this brand. They don't have to be encouraged through paid acquisition or retention marketing or any sort of marketing. You just come back and willingly buy from you. Now, the third thing that happens. So number one, you escape the commodity trap, which means that you can charge premium prices and people still choose you. Two, you boost loyalty and retention. Customers keep coming back to you and buying from you. And three, the performance of your paid advertising improves, right? Or your advertising in general, it just improves, right? Your blended CAC naturally decreases. Your CTR increases and your ROI is higher. This happens because consumers aren't just buying your products. They are buying your brand, right? So your marketing as a whole, your advertising as a whole, it becomes more efficient, right? Because of the brand equity you've been able to build, right? Put simply, building a brand is important because it helps you make more money, right? So the whole purpose of building a brand is to influence consumer behavior so that you can make more money. That's it. Influence consumer behavior so that you can make more money. That's the purpose of building a brand. So far we've gone through what a brand actually is, which is the perception people have of your company in the marketplace. That's what a brand is. The perception people have of your company in the marketplace, and it encompasses the thoughts, the feelings, and the direct or indirect experiences, such as word of mouth. It encompasses all those things, right? And that's what a brand is, right? Two, the importance of building a strategic brand is you don't want to become a commodity. You want to stand out. You want to be able to charge premium prices, retain customers, and improve the efficiency of your advertising efforts. And all this leads to more money. All of this leads to more money, essentially, right? So in essence, the purpose of branding or the purpose of building a brand is to essentially make more money, right? So that's the two things we've gone through so far. We're going to go into how to build a strategic brand now. We're going to go through the brand strategy framework, right? How to actually build a brand, right? So we know what a brand is. We know the importance of it. Now is how do we actually build one, right? So that's what we're going to go through now. Now, how to build a brand strategy framework. Now let's get into how to build a brand strategy. Okay, firstly, as a brand owner, you should get clear on how you want to be perceived before jumping on social media or even start marketing in general. This is because social media strategy won't be effective without a brand strategy, and here's why. Brand strategy, simply put, is a plan that outlines how a company positions its brand in the market to achieve specific goals. It involves defining the brand's values, target audience, messaging, and overall approach to create a consistent and compelling identity. A social media strategy, on the other hand, specifically outlines how a brand would use social platforms to achieve its goals, reach its target audience, and convey its message. Without a brand strategy, what exactly is the company doing on social media, right? So without a brand strategy, it's kind of like pointless to be on social media. You can still make money, which is what I'm about to go through now, but you won't make as much money unless you have a brand strategy, right? Now, with that being said, many e-commerce slash DTC founders market their businesses and manage to make money without a brand strategy. However, with a solid brand strategy, they will be less vulnerable to major market shifts and would also have the potential to generate significantly more revenue, right? Because you have a brand, you have brand equity, people naturally choose you. So even if the market shifts a little bit, people will still have you as their number one option, as their go-to, right? So you'll be less affected whenever the market shifts in any direction. You still be able to generate, revenue in a sustainable manner, right? When you build a brand. Once you go through this simple brand strategy framework, you'll gain clarity and have the power to shape the perception consumers have of your company. Now, this is a simple brand strategy framework. Check this out. I'm gonna pull this up. Hopefully you can see this on the screen in a second. So cool. This is the brand strategy framework that we use, at least the simplified version of it. Anyways, this is a simplified version, right? Because I don't want to make this video too long, right? But in essence, this is what we're trying to do, right? So as you can see, we have two phases. When it comes to brand strategy, we have two phases. The first phase is strategic direction, which is phase one. Phase one, strategic direction, right? That's the first phase. The second phase is strategic expression, which hopefully you can see here. Strategic expression, that's the second phase. First phase, strategic direction. Second phase, strategic expression. Now, when it comes to strategic direction, we have the brand DNA and positioning, right, as the two essentially arms of brand strategic direction, right? The two arms are brand DNA and brand positioning, right? And the two arms of strategic expression is voice on one side, as you can see here, voice on one side, and then visuals on the other side. So on one arm you have visuals, on the other arm you have voice, and this is the two arms in strategic expression. And the two arms in strategic direction is brand DNA and positioning, brand positioning, right? Now, within brand DNA, right, of the bottom half, which is the important part, without this, we can move on to expression. Phase one is very important, which is, strategic direction is the most important phase, right? Because without this, we have no foundation, which is why it's at the bottom. It's the foundation, brand substance foundation. So we have to essentially come up with a brand purpose. If we're working with brands, obviously they would already have this down in their head. Obviously, some brands might have a mission and a vision, but they don't have a purpose. Some brands have a purpose, but they might not have a vision or mission, right? So like every brand has one of these things. But the thing is, I think you don't need all of them, but you do need to have a vision, right? And you need to have a mission. These are the two most important ones. The purpose is not that important, but we will still advise for you to have one, right? And the difference is the purpose is essentially why your company exists. What's the reason it exists? Why did you decide to build your company in the first place? A vision is what the future that you imagine happening, right? That you want to create with your company. What are you trying to achieve with your company? That's what the vision is. What future do you see that you're able to create with your company? And the mission is exactly how you're going to make that future state happen. That's what mission is. And then values is essentially a moral compass, how you operate. Saying to you, this could be like, operate with integrity and with love, or whatever the case may be. Every brand has their different values. They have different things that they deem to be important. We would recommend to have like a 3 to 4 values. If you have too much, your team members at the company, the talent at the company won't be able to remember every single one. So we have 3 at our company, right? But as I said, for brand owners watching this, 3 or 4 max. You shouldn't have a lot of them, right? So that's that. So you need to have 3 to 4 values, come up with a purpose, a vision, and a mission. Now, on the other arm, now you have positioning, right? And in positioning, you have 3 elements: target audience, competitors, and point of difference, right? And this is essentially how you're going to, what position you're going to take in the market, right? What do you want to be known as? What do you want to provide to the market? What gap in the market hasn't been fulfilled yet, right? What do customers want that they're not getting currently? That's the gap that you should go after, right? Because then you're going to be able to stand out right? Without good positioning, you won't be able to stand out, because there's other competitors that are bigger than you, right? So if you go and try and compete with someone that's already doing something, you're not going to win. They've been in the game for longer than you. They've got more resources. They've got talent. They've got capital. They're just going to beat you. So you need to find something that the market is not already getting, right? But they want, because they also have to want it. If you give them something, if you give the market something they're not looking for, even if they're not getting it, they won't buy from you. It needs to be something that they want, and that they're not currently getting. Those two things have to be true. They want it, but they're not getting it. So they have to. Those two things have to be true in order for you to, have a good positioning, right? Because having something that the market is not getting, but that they don't want, isn't going to be valuable because they don't care about it. They don't want it, right? So you need to be positioned in a way where you're offering the market something that they want, but that they're not currently getting, that a bigger competitor is not currently giving them, right? So that's how you need to position yourself, right? So that's essentially the brand substance, the foundation, the brand DNA, and the positioning. Now, moving on to phase 2, the strategic expression, right? This is all how to build brand, right? You have to get clear on all these different aspects, right? Strategic expression, you have on one arm, brand voice and brand visuals. Let's go to brand voice first, right? Because it's essentially the third part, right? So we go from left to right. So you have the brand personality, which is essentially like the human-like traits that your brand is projecting. So for example, like being sincere or sophisticated or honest or confident or funny or charismatic, whatever the case may be, all the human-like traits that your brand projects. This is what helps you to build an emotional connection with your audience, right? Because your brand essentially should be like a human being. It should be like a being, right? It needs to be able to relate to customers, right? So to relate to customers, which are human beings, you need to have human-like traits, right? So brand personality is very important. This is how you build relationships with customers. This is how you build that emotional connections, which we'll get to in a second. But this is how you build that emotional connection. Without brand personality, you can't do it, right? So then we have messaging, which is essentially what you say. Like it's quite self-explanatory. Messaging, what you say is the core ideas, the value propositions, the promises you communicate to your target audience, right? What you say. And then we have tone of voice, which is essentially your communication style, right? How you decide to communicate based on what platform you're on. For example, you might decide to be more playful and more light-hearted when you're communicating to your audience through social media. But then when you're communicating to them through email, like through email marketing or SMS, you might decide to be more formal and more serious, right? When you're communicating to them. So your tone of voice, it has to be consistent, right? So if you're gonna say on social media we're gonna be more playful, and then on email we're gonna be more serious, then you have to consistently do that over time. You have to be serious on email, and you have to be playful on social media consistently all the time. You can't keep changing it, because you have to that intentionality and that consistency is what allows you to build a brand. If you're not consistent, you will never be able to build a brand. You have to be consistent with your actions. You have to be very intentional and consistent with those actions, right? That's what allows you to build a brand. But anyways, I don't want to get into too much detail here. But the point I'm trying to make here is brand personality, messaging, of course, and tone of voice are very important, right? And then you have the brand story, which essentially is essentially the story of where your brand came from, what it stands for, what does your brand stand for, and why it exists in the first place. Coming back to what we said earlier about purpose, why does your brand exist, right? So this is how you have to communicate your brand story, right? So it's part of this. It's part of the strategic expression, because you have to communicate it. So again, where does your brand come from? We have to get clear on this. What does it stand for? What does your brand stand for? I'll go through an example in a second, by the way, with the brand, right? And then why does it exist? Why does your brand exist? What's the purpose of your brand? Saying to you. So again, this ties in back to what we said earlier: a strategic foundation, purpose. Now, brand name and tagline, right? Based on your positioning strategy, your tagline should be a short, concise, sentence that essentially encapsulates your positioning, right? When you start out, obviously in the future you could essentially change your tagline and make it more, have a broader appeal. We'll go for an example in a second as well. This will make sense in a second. But your tagline, when you start out, if you're a smaller company, 7-figure, 8-figure, even 9-figure, you should be focusing on your positioning, right? Your tagline should encapsulate your positioning. It should highlight your positioning, right? People should read your tagline and know exactly why they should buy from you, right? So I'll go for an example in a second, right? And also your brand name, self-explanatory, right? And then you have the visual aspect, so the text fonts, the typography and the colors, the aesthetics, the brand logo, right? This is the easiest part. This is what most people focus on, right? But without this part, the brand voice and the strategic direction, the foundation, the substance of the brand, without these elements here, you have nothing. You can't build a brand without these elements at the bottom. You need all of this, right? To be able to essentially build this thing and actually have a brand that connects with consumers, right? So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but you need to get clear on all these elements. So once again, just to quickly summarize, you need to get clear on your brand DNA, brand positioning, so purpose, values, vision, mission, positioning, target audience, competitors. This is obviously market research, right? And point of difference, right? You need to get clear on all of this. Like you have to know all of this information. You have to write this down. You have to have a document that essentially where you have all this information. If you partner with us at IDMA, we will create a document for you. We will go through this exercise, this framework with you, right? To essentially get clarity on what we're trying to do with our brand, what the purpose of our brand is. All of these things will go through this process with you as a brand owner if you become an IDMA partner. Now, as I said, brand voice, brand story, so like brand name, tagline, brand personality, messaging, tone of voice, text fonts, colors, / aesthetics, brand logo, all of this. We have to get clarity on all of these things to build the brand, right? All of it is important. The foundation is very important. Without this, you can't build the top, right? Now, let's go back to our Google Doc. Cool. Now, I want to briefly touch on a few of the brand elements quickly. So positioning. When it comes to positioning, there are two types: brand positioning and product positioning. Brand positioning answers questions like, what does buying from X brand say about me? How do I feel when I do? Who do I become when I buy from X brand? This is what brand positioning is, right? So there are two types of brand positioning and product positioning, right? Product positioning focuses on why should I buy a product from brand X instead of brand Y? For most DTC brand owners watching this video, you should focus on product positioning. This is because as a smaller or emerging brand, you have limited mindshare to win early on. In other words, because most customers aren't yet familiar with you, you must use whatever little attention you get with absolute clarity. If you're a smaller brand, focus on product positioning because you're not gonna get that much attention. So when you get attention, you want to make that attention, that small amount of attention that you get, count, right? You want to make it count. So you need to be absolutely clear, and the way to be clear about what you offer is by actually focusing on product positioning. What's the value proposition? What's your unique selling point, right? So you need to focus on that, right? This is why we went through the brand strategy framework, USP, right? What do potential customers want that they're not currently getting, right? It's very important, right? Now, in other words, because most customers aren't yet familiar with you, you must use whatever little attention you get with absolute clarity. Here's exactly who we are. Here's exactly why we're different. So you need to be very, very clear on what you offer to the markets. Otherwise, you risk being overlooked or forgotten, right? People will forget about you because you're not that big of a brand yet. You don't have a high level of awareness in the marketplace, right? A straightforward promise or point of difference immediately tells prospects what you do and why you're different. Once you've earned credibility on that one front, you can gradually layer in a broader, big idea to develop an irrational and emotional connection with consumers. If you don't nail that early promise, that value proposition, that unique selling point, those bigger ideals will be swallowed by the noise, right? So don't focus on bigger ideas, and I'll give you an example now. Focus on that unique selling point when you start out. If you're a smaller brand, 7 figures, 8 figures, even 9 figures, focus on that unique selling point, right? Now, practical takeaway. Instead of trying to come up with a tagline like "just do it" like Nike does, which Nike has a higher level of awareness, almost everybody knows about Nike, right? Instead of focusing on "just do it" or "think different," which is Apple's tagline, again, which communicates brand essence or big idea, right? Again, these are brands, these are two brands, these are two companies that have a high level of awareness. Instead of focusing on creating taglines like this, try to come up with a tagline like, when it absolutely positively has to be there. So that's FedEx's tagline, right? And or eat fresh, which is even simpler, by Subway, right? So when people are looking at Subway or considering Subway and they're thinking, why should I go for Subway instead of something else? Well, they think about the tagline and say, well, eat fresh. If I go to Subway, I'll eat fresh, right? Or if I'm thinking about posting something, instead of going to a different, like, like posting company or whatever the case may be, I'll go to FedEx, right? A different shipping company. I'll go to FedEx because FedEx, when it absolutely positively has to be there, when it gets there fast, right? I wanted to get there fast, I choose FedEx, right? This is a clear, benefit-driven message that stakes your claim and signals what makes your brand the obvious choice. So, eat fresh, Subway's tagline directly communicates why you should buy from Subway, right? When it absolutely positively has to be there. Again, when you want your whatever you're shipping to get there, like by as fast as possible, well, you choose FedEx. Again, that's their value proposition. It will get there no matter what, right? That's their value proposition. That's the unique selling point, right? Their tagline tells you why you should buy from them or why you should use their service, right? Right. So, and when I say this, you must still wonder, but how do I position my brand? I'll give you 3 simple steps. Number 1, audit the market. What are your competitors already offering to your target audience? What are they offering? What are your competitors telling the market that they can give them, right? 2, spot the gaps. What does your audience, what does your target audience truly want that they aren't getting today, right? So what do they want that they aren't getting? So number 1, what do your competitors offer to your target audience? Number 2, what does your target audience want that they're not currently getting? And then 3, own the space. Define a specific market position that addresses this gap in the marketplace. So you have to offer what the target audience wants that they're not currently getting already. So you have to come in and offer that and sell the thing that they want, not what you think they want. Sell what they want, right? So that's what you need to do. Now, brand story. A brand story is, just to summarize that quickly, by the way, positioning. There are 2 types of positioning: brand positioning and product positioning. If you're a smaller brand, focus on product positioning. And what that means, essentially, focus on your unique selling points. Focus on what makes you different and why people should buy from you, because you don't have a high level of awareness. So people won't pay you much attention. So the little attention that they're going to pay you, you should focus on essentially telling them why they should buy from you, instead of focusing on a big ideal. Like, just do it, like Nike does. Nike has a high level of awareness. They can get away with it. They can get away with it. Now, Apple has think different as a slogan. Again, they can focus on the big ideal because they have a high level of awareness. They can get away with it. They get a lot of attention, right? They have a high level of awareness. Whereas a smaller brand, you don't have that much awareness. So the little awareness that you have, you need to use it intentionally and with clarity. You need to leverage it to tell people how you can serve them better than someone else. Do you know what I'm saying? What do you offer that other people don't offer? Focus on that, right? Focus on product positioning when you start out, right? As a smaller company, as a smaller brand, right? Now, brand story. A brand story is a tale that we've spoken about this before. It's a tale that explains what a company is all about. It shares where the company came from, 2, what it stands for, and why it exists. For example, with Nike, it began with the vision of 2 founders, Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight, who aimed to revolutionize athletic gear to help athletes perform their best. So that's why it exists. This is the reason why they built Nike. From a humble beginnings in a small Oregon workshop, which is essentially where the company came from, a small Oregon workshop, Nike soared to become a global icon of victory and inspiration. With iconic athletes like Michael Jordan and Serena Williams leading the charge, Nike's story is one of relentless determination, triumphing over adversity, and empowering athletes worldwide, which is essentially what the brand stands for. The brand stands for determination, triumphing over adversity, and empowering athletes worldwide. That's what they stand for, right? So that's what Nike's brand story is, right? As an example, right? Now, I've talked about brand personality, brand messaging, and tone of voice. But yeah, like I said, to summarize, brand personality refers to the human-like traits your brand projects. such as being daring, sincere, or sophisticated. It gives your brand a relatable character, shaping how people emotionally connect with it, right? Like I said, your brand personality is very important. This is how consumers connect with your brand. Without brand personality, they won't be able to relate to your brand, so they can't connect, right? Remember, your brand has to be like a being, like a person, right? To be able to connect with consumers, because they're people, right? Your brand messaging is what you say, the core ideas, value propositions, and promises you communicate to your audience, right? This is quite self-explanatory. It's what you say. And then tone of voice. Your tone of voice is how you say it, your attitude, style, and emotional nuance in your communication. So how you communicate, your style of communication, essentially. It modulates your brand voice based on context, e.g. formal on emails, so you're more serious on emails, versus playful or social media. For example, that's just an example. Every brand is different, so you can do whatever you want, right? As long as you're consistently doing that, right? Always aligning with your overall personality. Of course, this has to align with your overall personality, because you can't have a funny personality and then be serious in all your communications. Have a serious tone of voice. It doesn't make sense. If you have a personality, a funny brand, or like a brand that has a personality that's funny, you can't have a formal style of communication. That doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Your brand personality is funny, but then you're serious all the time. It has to be congruent, right? So your tone of voice has to match your brand personality, right? That's it. So that's it. So that so far we've gone through what brand actually is, the importance of building a strategic brand, and how to actually build a strategic brand, right? Now the last part is how to own a position in the mind of consumers. So this is what we call brand associations. But yeah, let's get into it. How to own a position in the mind of consumers, brand associations. Now that you understand what a brand is, it's important, and why it's important, and how to strategically build one, I wanted to make this video even more valuable by offering additional clarity on brand positioning, right? We talked about product positioning and why it's important. Now I want to offer more clarity on brand positioning, right? Brand positioning is without a doubt the most important part of brand strategy. This is because your brand positioning is what dictates every aspect of your strategic expression, and it's essentially what drives your target audience to choose your company over your competitors, right? Strong brand positioning provides a coherent backdrop for all product messages. For example, when Apple's brand is positioned on innovation and simplicity, each product, iPhone, iPad, MacBook, inherits that association, right? I know we just covered the brand strategy framework and briefly discussed how to define your ideal market position for your brand. But the reality is, as a DTC brand owner, you don't position your brand, your potential customers do. This is very important to understand. You don't actually position your brand. Your potential customers actually do the positioning for you. And here's how that happens. Your job is to intentionally shape or influence their perception so that they instinctively place you where you want to be placed. To achieve this, you need to, number one, get clear on where you want to be positioned, which is part of the brand strategy framework, brand strategy work you've done already, right? So the framework that we've gone through already, that teaches you how to be intentional about where you position your brand, right? And then two, leverage brand associations to guide customers toward that position. So you have to, number one, get clear on where you want to be positioned, how you want to be essentially positioned in the marketplace, and then two, leverage brand associations. Very important. Very, very important, right? So leverage brand associations to guide customers towards that position. Now, brand associations are the ideas, feelings, and attributes that consumers link to your brand, right? So these are the ideas, the feelings, the attributes, right? Their experience, the experience that they link to your brand. This is what brand associations are, right? Are all the things that they associate with your brand, right? Now, when you hear people talk about branding, they're often referring, because you hear a lot of people say, oh, branding is so important, branding. People talk about branding all the time. When you hear people talk about branding, what they're often referring to is the process, of shaping and managing those brand associations. Remember, we said that brand associations are the ideas, feelings, and attributes that consumers link to your brand, right? So when people talk about branding, they're talking about shaping and managing the ideas, feelings, and attributes that consumers link to your brand. This is what they're talking about. When you talk about branding, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to shape, influence, or manage these ideas and feelings and attributes. The biggest brands do this all the time. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to shape how you think about them, the feelings that you associate with them, the attributes that you associate with them. For example, like with Apple, you have innovation and creativity being associated to Apple as a company. You have innovation and creativity, and you associate those things to Apple. With Nike, you have empowerment, determination, motivation, all this, just do it. That mentality is associated with Nike. What Nike does is trying to associate those ideals, those core ideals, that mentality to Nike as a company. That's how they build the brand. That association is what allows them to build the brand, right? So, anyways, when it comes to branding, you have to understand that there are two types of branding. So there's good branding, which is the clear, consistent, and intentional brand associations that evoke an idea or feeling that the target audience resonates with, right? So this is why, like I said, with Nike, they just do it mentality, right? It resonates with a lot of people, right? It makes them feel like they can relate to Nike, right? Because they have that same mentality, right? So Nike is projecting that ideal, and people relate to that ideal, right? So they resonate with Nike's message, right? So again, and Nike has to consistently be doing it, which is what they've been doing consistently over the years. They have to be clear, consistent, and intentional with these ideals, right? So you can associate, you can position them as the brand that, again, stands for just do it mentality, the determination, motivation, striving for greatness, all these things. So they have to consistently communicate that kind of idea to get you to associate their company, Nike, to that idea. They have to consistently communicate these ideas, and they do it through every storytelling campaign, which we'll get to in a second, right? Now, that's good branding. Bad branding is the opposite. Confusing, inconsistent, or irrelevant brand associations that fail to connect with the target audience. This is why to build a brand, you have to be clear and consistent and intentional. You have to consistently and intentionally associate ideas and feelings to your company. You have to be consistent and intentional about it. You can't just associate random things. You have to associate things intentionally, right, and consistently over time. It has to be an intentional and consistent process. And of course, bad branding is the opposite, right? So to build a brand, to do good branding, you have to be clear. You have to have clear, consistent, and intentional brand associations that evoke an idea or a feeling that the target audience resonates with, right? Because these ideas would then be associated to the brand or the company itself. This idea will be associated with the company. That's how you build the brand. But you have to do it intentionally and consistently, right? Now, good branding makes your company more appealing or attractive in the eyes of consumers. As we said, if they resonate with it, they're going to associate your company to these ideas, right? The ideas that you're projecting with your company, they're gonna essentially associate it to you, right? So it's gonna be more attractive to them because it resonates with them. It resonates with the type of person that they are, right? As a DTC brand owner, what you want to do is good branding because it's the thing that will allow you to inevitably make more money, obviously, right? Because consumers resonate with your messages, so they feel like they can relate to your brand and therefore gonna choose you over other competitors, right? But how does this actually work? Okay, cool. So good branding, like we said, good branding is the clear, consistent, and intentional brand associations that essentially evoke an idea or a feeling that your target audience resonates with, right? So if you're intentional and consistent about the ideas and feelings that you associate to your company, if you're consistently doing that and you're intentional about it, then you'll be doing good branding. And when you do good branding, what happens is that your target audience, consumers, they develop an irrational and emotional connection, right, with your brand. They develop an irrational and emotional connection. They connect because they can relate to your brand's message. So, for example, with Nike, the reason they're able to make billions is because their messaging resonates with so many people. So many people relate to that whole being determined, overcoming adversity and just doing it and just approaching it with a winning mentality, and just like that mentality, the brand essence, the brand's Nike's essence relates with a lot of people. A lot of people can relate to that, right? And when they relate to it, they develop an irrational and emotional connection with Nike, for example, or Apple, right? Or with any other brand for that matter. But just in general, like I think Nike does this well, right? So, anyways, when you're consistent and intentional about the messaging, the people that resonate with that messaging develop an irrational and emotional connection with your brand. And when they develop that emotional and irrational connection, an irrational connection with your brand, that connection leads to preference. So because of that irrational and emotional connection, they'll make you their go-to brand. Essentially, you become the preferred option. You become the preference. You become the number one option. When you think about buying a product in your product category, don't just think about you first, right? Because you become the default option. You become the one that they just straight away think about, because they built that irrational and emotional connection. So they're not even going to consider all their competitors. They're just going to go straight to you, right? They're not going to look at all the competitors and think, well, they're not going to look at all the competitors and think, well, let me look at them and let me consider what the best price is and this, that. They're not even going to do that. They're going to go straight to you because of the connection that they've built with your brand, right? And of course, if that happens consistently and they choose you over competitors, that means you make more money. That's how branding works. That's the whole point of branding, which, like we said earlier, the purpose of branding is to make more money, to influence behavior, to influence consumer behavior, and get them to buy from you, and so you can make more money. That's the whole point of branding, right? So good branding leads to irrational and emotional connection, and that irrational and emotional connection leads to preference, and preference means more money because people choose you over your competitors, right? That's how it works. How does a company create the brand association it wants its target audience to form, right? There are many different ways to do this, but brand storytelling is one of the primary methods that companies use to influence the associations consumers form about a brand. Brand storytelling is a form of marketing that doesn't chase immediate sales or direct responses. Instead, it focuses on raising awareness and forging an emotional bond with the audience, building long-term trust and loyalty. Like we said, the whole point that we're trying to do with branding, good branding, is to essentially build that irrational and emotional connection. And the best way to do that, well, the primary way to do that is brand storytelling. And I'll give you examples in a second, right? Now, brands that leverage storytelling as a way to leverage storytelling as a way to intentionally guide their target audience to form the desired brand associations and deepen the connection with the brand. Like I said, the whole point of brand storytelling is to essentially build that irrational and emotional connection with the brand, and essentially they do this by associating the brand to ideas and feelings, right? And this is done through brand storytelling, right? So this is the whole purpose of it. Now, let me go for an example. Nike, one of Nike's most iconic campaigns, does precisely this. It guides their target audience to form the desired brand associations of empowerment, determinations, and resilience by showcasing athletes overcoming obstacles, pushing their limits, and achieving greatness. For example, the ad featuring Michael Jordan's rise to basketball stardom and Serena Williams' journey to tennis dominance are classic examples of Nike's storytelling prowess. Now, brand storytelling is the bridge between brand strategy and marketing. It turns brand identity into emotionally resonant content that marketing can deliver to the world, right? So that's brand storytelling in a nutshell, right? Now, I know a lot of brand owners are tired of hearing about Nike being used as an example. So here's another example of good branding by a relatively smaller brand, right? Remember, good branding equals clear, consistent, and intentional brand associations that evoke an idea or feeling that the target audience resonates with. So cool. We're going to use Red Bull as an example. At its core, Red Bull stands for energy, adventure, and pushing human potential. Universally captured by their tagline, Red Bull gives you wings. It's less about selling a drink and more about empowering action, courage, and defying limits. Now, 3 ways Red Bull intentionally guide the target audience to associate the brand with action, courage, and defying limits. Right. So what I'm gonna do now is show you 3 examples of how Red Bull essentially associates their brand with action, courage, and define limits, which is essentially their brand essence. This is what Red Bull is trying to sell you. They're not just selling you a drink, they're selling you the action, courage, and being able to essentially defy limits, right? This is what they're selling you. So these are the 3, I'm gonna show you 3 examples or 3 initiatives that essentially Red Bull ran or did or continue to do, right? To essentially associate their company, Red Bull, with this idea of courage, define limits, and essentially action and energy, right? So the first initiative was the Red Bull Stratus. This is where Felix Baumgartner space jump. So what he did was jump from space essentially, and Red Bull facilitated the whole thing. The equipment, the rocket, whatever the case may be, like all the things that he needed to skydive, right, from space. Like Red Bull basically set this all up and they actually gave him a platform to essentially do this, right? So they recorded this, they filmed this. This can be, you can actually do a quick YouTube search and you can see videos on this. There's a bunch of videos on this, right? So Red Bull essentially filmed the whole thing and gave Felix a platform to do this, right? So that's that. And it was also, he broke the world record, right? So a record-breaking 2012 mission where Felix Baumgartner skydived from approximately 39 kilometers of altitude. So from space, right? He jumped from space. Ridiculous, but he jumped from space, right? And obviously this aligns with, empowering action, because Red Bull enabled Felix, to take the leap, literally giving wings and a platform to act, right? So Red Bull is associating this action, this movement or this skydive by giving Felix a platform and all the equipment needed to essentially do the skydive. And then 2 is the courage. Again, jumping from space takes a lot of courage, right? So they're associating courage to their brand, to their company. They're associating the courage to the idea of courage, the feeling, the idea of courage to the company, Red Bull, right? So again, jumping from approximately 39 kilometers above Earth, breaking the sound barrier, an act of extraordinary bravery. So again, they're associating courage to the company, right? And then define limits, surpassed human and technical boundaries. Viewers saw what was once impossible become real. So again, he broke the record. So no one has ever done it before. They've done it, and it was thanks to Red Bull, right? So again, they're associating this idea of define limits to Red Bull, the company. Again, this is how they're building the association. So that's example number 1. Red Bull Stratus, the skydive by Felix Baumgartner, right? So the second example is extreme sports events. So obviously Red Bull hosts, niche sports like, air race, rampage, cliff diving. So Red Bull hosts high energy competitions in niche sports like precision flying, downhill mountain biking, and cliff diving. Again, how does this link to empowering action? Well, Red Bull organizes platforms for athletes to compete at the highest level in extreme conditions. So they organize all these platforms. They set up the platform. They give them a platform to essentially compete, right? Courage. Athletes face perilous terrain or split-second aerial challenges, raw bravery on full display. Again, the idea of courage being associated with Red Bull. Courage, right? The things that they're doing is extraordinary or ridiculous. It's crazy, right? So that's what they're doing. They're associating courage, empowering action with their company. And again, define limits. Competitors push both physical and mental boundaries, resetting norms and what's achievable, right? So again, they keep associating empowering action, courage, and define limits. They keep associating these ideas to their company through what they do, right? First, with the skydive, right? The Red Bull Stratus, the skydive. 2, with the extreme sports events that they host. They're associating action, courage, and define limits their brand, keep doing it with everything they do. Every single initiative is intentional. So they're intentionally and consistently doing initiatives that associate their company, right, to these ideas. They're consistently associating ideas, right? They're consistently and intentionally associating these ideas to their company. They're doing it intentionally. This is not by accident or luckily. They're doing it on purpose. These are two different initiatives, and they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it intentionally on purpose, right? And they're doing it consistently, right? And the third thing is Red Bull Media House content storytelling. So Red Bull's in-house media arm produces and distributes original sports and cultural programming, documentaries, broadcast, and digital content. Through content-first storytelling, they weave narratives that emotionally connect with acts of human achievement. Empowering action, obviously this how do they empower action? Red Bull shares athlete stories and behind the scenes inspiring viewers to pursue their own bold feats, right? Again, this is how they empower action, right? They're inspiring people to take action, right? Courage, how does this initiative, align with their idea of courage, right? So they highlight challenges, failures, and triumphs, showing grit and boldness in real time. Again, associating the idea of courage with the company. Define limits through documentaries and athlete profiles reveals how people turn ambition into reality, transcending their personal limits. Again, define limits. How do they define limits? Well, they're literally doing it through documentaries, right? So they keep intentionally and consistently associating their company, Red Bull, to these ideas of empowering action, courage, and define limits. These are three different initiatives. This is the Red Bull Media House, the Extreme Sports Events, and the Red Bull Stratus. They do this intentionally. Obviously, this was a one-time thing, right? But these are ongoing things. The Extreme Sports Events and the Red Bull Media House, these are ongoing things. They do this like on an ongoing basis because they try to consistently and intentionally associate their company with these ideas of action, courage, and define limits. They keep trying to make that brand association. This is how they build that emotional connection with consumers, right? This is not Nike, because I know a lot of people talk about Nike all the time. So I'm giving you a different example. Red Bull's doing it as well. Any brand that's making serious money is doing it, right? Because it's an intentional thing. It doesn't happen by chance. It happens by intentionally and consistently associating an idea or a feeling that to your company, that your audience and your target audience resonates with. Basically, that's what you're doing, making brand associations that evoke an idea or a feeling. These initiatives evoke an idea, right? Or ideas of empowering action, courage, and define limits. And this allows you to build an emotional connection with them, with target audience, right? Anyways, moving on. To conclude, brand associations are the essence of branding because they are what consumers remember, feel, and ultimately choose. This is why good branding leads to preference and leads to making more money, right? Because when you do good branding, you build an emotional and irrational connection with your target audience, and this emotional and irrational connection leads to preference. So consumers choose you because of this irrational and emotional connection that you achieve through brand associations, right? Through consistent and intentional brand associations. That's how this works. It's a very simple process. It just takes time, right? And intentionality. It takes consistency, right, over time, and intentionality, right? Now, anyways, the clear, consistent, and intentional associations that a brand builds serve as the foundation for owning a distinct place in the consumer's mind. However, if you run a smaller e-commerce or direct-to-consumer business, focus on product positioning first, right? Product positioning focuses on why should I buy a product from a brand instead of brand why, right? So this is what I said earlier, like don't focus on brand positioning when you're starting out. If you're a 7-figure brand, 8-figure brand, even 9-figure brand in most cases, like don't focus on brand positioning. Focus on your unique selling point, product positioning, your unique selling points. Why should people buy you over someone else? Focus on your unique selling point. And then as your company grows, then you can focus on the bigger idea, right? Or the essence of your brand, right? You can be more broad, right? Remember Subway with Eat Fresh, And remember, like FedEx, when he absolutely positively has to get there, again, they're telling you why you should buy them straight away. And these are big companies doing this. All right. So anyways, establish credibility in your industry. Then as your business grows, begin communicating your brand's deeper essence or big idea, right? So we've gone through what a brand actually is, the importance of building a strategic brand, 3, how to build a brand with a brand strategy framework, right? And then how to own a position in the mind of consumers through brand associations. And we've gone through an example as well with Red Bull, right? So that's everything that we've covered today. I hope you guys have really enjoyed this video. And yeah, if you're looking for free specific help with your digital marketing efforts, feel free to book a consultation call. An IDMA growth consultant will get a call with you to give you advice and actionable steps to solve any specific digital marketing problems you're currently facing with your e-commerce brand. Now, full disclosure, at the end of the consultation call, if our growth consultants determine that your e-commerce brand meets our required standards, then we might consider a partnership with you. At IDMA, we do not partner with every brand owner. In fact, we only partner with brand owners that are in a position to rapidly scale their e-commerce brand with the help of our growth team. With that being said, book a consultation call with us to get free and specific help with your digital marketing today.